Hello everybody and welcome to the second in a series of videos I'm doing covering not only my Godzilla collection but all of the Blu-ray and DVD releases of the whole series. Keep in mind that this is the Region 1 releases of this, so I won't be covering things like the Japanese releases or the European releases just to keep things quick and clean. Now, the first video covered the Showa period, which I'll have a link to somewhere at the very least in the description down below. This video will be covering the Heisei period. Again, similar to the first video, I'm not going to get too much into the plot. This is more going to be talking about the release history as well as the home video releases. However, I may touch on the plots a little bit. It's just not the prime focus, so I'm just letting you know that right out the gate. Now, the Heisei period started in 1984 with the return of Godzilla and ended with Godzilla vs. Daesil in 1995. Unlike the Showa period, which had 15 movies in its run, this had a whopping 7, which should make it a little easier to cover. Now, because of this, I'm going to change up the formatting a little bit. In the last video, there was just so many movies that I had to cover them in terms of their home video releases, whereas now I can actually just do them in chronological order, so should make it a little bit easier to follow. I'll also mention at this point, just to get it out of the way, that this particular series of movies kind of weirdly mentions psychic powers like a lot. There always seems to be someone with some kind of mental connection or sixth sense involving Godzilla. It's bizarrely specific, so I thought I would just mention it here. But anyway, let's get right into it. As mentioned, the first in this series is 1984's Return of Godzilla, which has quite the interesting history. You see, after Terror of Mechagodzilla didn't do so hot at the box office, there was tons of talk of reinvigorating the series. At first it was going to be a color remake of the original, then it was going to be a darker Godzilla with titles being thrown around like Godzilla vs. the Devil. I mean, that would be pretty cool, right? The coolest sounding of these was going to be a film which harkened back to Godzilla's anti-nuclear roots, which would have had Godzilla fighting a shape-shifting creature created by discarded nuclear waste. Think like John Carpenter's The Thing. This was eventually shut down due to budget concerns, and it was decided to make a movie that was a sequel to the original but also served as kind of a reboot. So because of this, the Heisei period doesn't really have any continuity with the Showa period. The only movie that really matters in terms of watching these is the first one. So you can just dive right into any of these without any worry of missing something in between. Now, the release history of Return of Godzilla is a bit messy to say the least. You see, when it was brought over here a year later after premiering in Japan, it was decided it should be edited much like the first Godzilla films, for American audiences. They even decided to bring back Raymond Burr as the same character he played in the original. Like, at one point there was even talks of having Leslie Nielsen edited in and making it like a satire or comedy, but apparently Raymond Burr really didn't like that idea and respected the message of the original too much to do that. The end result is an Americanized version simply titled Godzilla 1985. Now, what does that mean for home releases, you may be asking? Well, this actually didn't get a DVD release until 2016, where it was released by Kraken Releasing. They also released a Blu-ray, which I own. Much like my other Kraken Blu-rays, this one has an excellent menu and features a trailer. It also includes trailers of other Godzilla films released by Kraken, which is nice. The version of the movie on this release is the original Japanese one, which most fans agree is the better version, and it even includes an English dub track. However, this is not Godzilla 1985. That version has only ever been released on VHS, and on VHS that was really the only version you could get, so now the roles are reversed. Now, apparently in 2003, Anchor Bay was very close to releasing Godzilla 1985, but Toho eventually pulled the plug on it. It's unclear just how close that release was, and part of me hopes there's like a storage container somewhere full of these, but at the moment, VHS is the only way to see it. Which, luckily I can thanks to Jex and our friend Pla, who managed to snag me a copy. The Kraken Blu-ray goes for around $20, but sometimes it can fluctuate. The next movie in the series is Godzilla vs. Biollante from 1989. This is a really weird one, which was actually written as part of a contest where fans could submit stories, and the winner got made into a movie. The winner was a dentist named Shinichiro Kobayashi. It focused more on biotechnology rather than just nuclear tech, which the series was known for. It made for a very different film, and Biollante has been compared to the plant from Little Shop of Horrors in appearance. This did not so hot theatrically in Japan and ended up being released direct-to-video on VHS by HBO. This then didn't get another home release until 2012 by Miramax Echo Bridge on DVD and Blu-ray. This included both English and Japanese audio tracks, as well as some behind-the-scenes featurettes. It was re-released a few more times, eventually by Lionsgate, all with the same features. The only exception, it seems, is when it was released in a bundle with other monster movies, as it looks like the featurettes were removed. This is the only Godzilla film I don't own because of its rarity. Like, I've seen the DVD go anywhere between $30 to $60, while the Blu-ray goes anywhere between like $80 and $190, which is crazy to me. If you're going for the Blu-ray, I'd say try for the one without the bonus movies in it. Next up, we have Godzilla vs. King Ghidorah from 1991. At this point, I'm also going to note that a lot of the home releases are going to start to look similar because they're all owned by Sony Pictures, so just bear that in mind. Now back to vs. King Ghidorah. So since Biollante didn't do as well as hoped, the next movie was approached with the thought process of fixing what went wrong with the last film. Biollante was too weird of a monster? Bring back a classic monster like Godzilla's arch nemesis King Ghidorah. Plot too complicated? Well, let's lean more into fantasy aspects of the later Showa series. Back to the Future stealing most of our audience? Yes, apparently that was one of the reasons it didn't do so well. Add time travel to the plot, so needless to say, it's pretty stark difference from the last film. I personally find it to be quite enjoyable and much more colorful after the last two. I also think the Terminator-esque robot in there had to have some kind of nod to Terminator, which is just fun. In terms of home releases, to my knowledge this has always been released from DVD forward in a double feature with the next film in the series, Godzilla and Mothra Battle for Earth. So let's talk about that one. So Godzilla and Mothra came out in 1992, and since vs. Ghidorah did well, they decided to bring back another classic monster, Mothra. Now, apparently they wanted to bring back Mothra earlier, but weren't sure that she'd be marketable enough for the American audiences, so they waited to see how Ghidorah would do before trying again. There was also some kind of poll done where it was determined that Mothra was most popular among women viewers, so there's that as well. Again, I enjoy this one. Not only did they bring back Mothra, but they created an evil version of Mothra called Batra, which is supposed to be like the Earth's answer to human destruction, while Mothra is supposed to be more like a mystical balance. There's also quite a bit of scenes that feel like a throwback to Indiana Jones, which is pretty cool. Now, the first DVD release was a double feature with TriStar in 1998, which is English dub only. This only includes the trailers as bonus features. These were then again released in 2014 in a triple pack with Godzilla, Mothra, King Ghidorah, Giant Monsters All Out Attack. More on that one later. I ended up getting the Sony Blu-ray double pack, which comes with trailers and has some decent box art. Again, moving forward, a lot of these releases are the same Sony one, so I'll say here they all have the same menus, which are pretty bland, but at least you can say they're consistent. They also generally tend to retail at about $20 to $25. Next up is Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla 2. Apparently this was supposed to be the last film in the series to avoid any conflict with the planned American Godzilla, so the idea was to remake King Kong vs. Godzilla, but Universal wouldn't give the rights to use Kong on the cheap. So for a moment there was an idea to bring back Mechagodzilla and have him like inject people inside Godzilla Fantastic Voyage style. However, as it turns out, even Mechagodzilla would have been expensive since you need some of the King Kong rights, and so they just scrapped all that and Mechagodzilla was brought back instead. The things I like about this film are how they use their continuity. Like, they bring back the mechanical Ghidorah head and use it to make Mechagodzilla in this one, which is kind of a cool concept. The new design of Baby Godzilla is also way better in my opinion. It's not a weird potato dinosaur anymore, or whatever this was.
Godzilla says that I should learn to fight my own battles, you know.
Even Rodan comes back looking super cool, so overall, very neat looking stuff. The first DVD release of this was back in 2005 by TriStar. All I can say is this came with trailers and apparently has so-so picture quality. It was then re-released by Sony in 2014, bundled with Space Godzilla, which is the next film in the series. Now, Godzilla vs. Space Godzilla came out in 1994. They apparently had the idea for a Space Godzilla as far back as 1978, and then an early draft wanted to have Space Godzilla command an army of alien dragonflies, but ultimately decided against it. The movie is more lighthearted than the last few, and is still quite fun, though I'm not too crazy about how they redesigned Baby Godzilla yet again. It's not terrible, but I prefer what they did in the last movie with the design. I also really like the team up with Mothra. This was apparently almost just going to be Mechagodzilla again, but they thought that might be overkill considering that Mechagodzilla almost defeated Godzilla in the last one, so Space Godzilla wouldn't stand a chance versus the two of them. The first DVD release of this was in 2000, again another double pack by TriStar. The other included film being Godzilla vs. Daesil. Again, the one I own is the Sony Blu-ray double pack, which includes trailers for both films and English or Japanese audio tracks, which is always appreciated. Next is the last film of the Heisei era, Godzilla vs. Daesil. Yes, that's how it's spelt. I'm not just being weird. That's how it is. This was a massive deal as Toho decided that with the previous two movies not drawing the same audience that Mothra once did, that they would actually kill off Godzilla. They hyped this up with countless publicity stunts hinting that the series was done forever, such as turning the big pool, a stunt pool used for numerous special effects based productions, into a parking lot, having Koichi Kawakita, special effects director on Godzilla films since the 70s, announce that he was retiring. They even held a funeral for Godzilla and built a monument. Like, this was huge. So originally it was planned to have Godzilla fight some kind of ghost Godzilla, or at least a creature possessed by the spirit of the original, but instead this features a creature created from the oxygen destroyer used in the first movie. In its final form, Destroyer looks like some kind of badass demon, so I guess they kind of did eventually get their Godzilla versus the devil. The cooler aspect still is that he gradually evolves into this final form throughout the movie, so at times in the smaller horde form, it almost reminds me of Aliens, though overall the tone is kind of closer to like a Power Rangers episode or something. Now at the same time that this is going on, Godzilla is actually suffering a nuclear meltdown, having absorbed too much radiation, so he's extremely unstable. So it's got a lot going on and gets pretty emotional at the end. Though this wouldn't be the final Godzilla after all, as there was more to come after a short break. So after its initial double feature release in 2000, it was released again in 2014 alongside Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla, which is the Blu-ray I have, which comes with trailers and also has the English and Japanese audio options. Now I skimmed over a few box sets, so let's cover those briefly. First, there's the Godzilla 50th Anniversary Collection, which has 9 movies in it, but as far as the Heisei era goes, it just includes both the double packs I mentioned before. Then there's the Toho Collection. Now, on DVD, these were released in 2 volumes, and I remember seeing these when they came out and being super excited. Like, between the two of them, they include almost all the Heisei series, just minus Return of Godzilla and Biollante, and it has all the Millennium series. I mean, it even has 2 of the Rebirth of Mothra films. Then I noticed something. The audio tracks on some of these are dub and some are sub, but none are both. So it's not consistent, and that can be frustrating if you don't know that going into it. They later released a combo pack of both volumes, but it seems to literally be the 2 DVD releases included with a slipcover. So if you're gonna go with the Toho collection, I'd just get the individual Blu-rays, since they have both audio options. I believe most of them have the same features, but still, if you're even remotely bothered by the non-consistent audio, I would just go with the Blu-rays and skip on it. And that concludes the Godzilla Heisei era. So hopefully you found this somewhat helpful, or at the very least entertaining, and next I'll be covering the Millennium series. Again, that's a pretty short one, so if you're interested, don't forget to subscribe. Maybe check out some of the other stuff that Jex and I do on this channel. We like to cover all kinds of different movies and music stuff, so keep an eye out for that. Also, don't forget to join our Discord. If you don't already have Discord, it's free to download and sign up for. It's basically just an open chat where you can talk to Jex and me about different, music or movies or whatever you feel like chatting about, and connect with other people that also like to talk about movies or music. So hey, feel free to join it. Anyways, I'll see you next time, guys. Later.